His old teammate was pummeling him with savage blows. Once the world's greatest sword genius, Ranson was sent on a hopeless mission 3 years ago. He came back broken and missing a hand and a leg, all because his teammates were jealous of him. Now every single day he got beaten and made to feel small. One day, he opened a strange book written in a language he didn't know he could read. As the book started to glow, he disappeared. He woke up trapped in a dark dungeon, suddenly 10,000 years in the past. There, he grabbed a legendary item and came back to the present. That thing broke open his sealed strength and fixed his broken arms and legs. And now, the sword master Ranson stood ready to start his revenge. Before that, a lonely castle stood in silence on the edge of Kushin City. A crowd of men walks into the big hall. One of them doubts the truth of the information, yet trusts it because Lord Zeus said so. He then asks if he is the only one who can't see any monsters or even a single ant. The subordinate whispered that the word about Chief Nagi arriving must have already reached everyone, and his companion nodded, agreeing it made perfect sense. They end up standing in a huge hall that is now just a pile of broken stones. One of the men looks around, puzzled that this strange new place never showed up on any map. Another hint points to a way out up the stairs. Ahead of them, a staircase waits in the long hallway. The subordinate checks the map and decides they must head up, because the other way looks too dangerous. Nagi remembers that the Ilnian gang was meant to handle the upper floor. He then points down the hall, says they'll go that way, and waves the group to move forward. But the subordinate hesitated, questioning the sudden order. Nagi won't let him stay, so the lackey nods to his boss and steps away. He walks into the dark corridor while the commander watches him. From there, he spins around to say there's nothing there, but another man tells Nagi there's nothing while a creature pops out behind him and attacks him, followed by a pack of wolves bursting from the dark to charge forward before sprinting out of the corridor. A wall springs up from the earth, cutting off the path. One of the men looks around in shock when the creatures show up. Now the whole group is trapped in the middle of the hall, surrounded by wolves. One asked what they do with all those demonic beasts, but the commander grabbed him and threw the question right back at him. He screams that if they want to live, they have to fight. So he tells his men to run forward and stand in the way to stop the creatures. The beasts charge at the group, forcing Nagi, their leader, to slam into the wall and drop his sword. As one wolf lunges to strike, an arrow finds its mark in the beast's neck, leaving the man to watch it fall dead before him. From up high, an archer steps forward to ask if they can lend a hand. The commander sees him and shouts for his brother, Ranson. Ranson hit the ground and said the timing was perfect. He then asks Nagi to keep a close eye on what happens next. Ranson tightens his grip on his sword, claims he has reached master status, and then strikes the charging wolf right through its mouth. He slashes the beast in two with one strong swing. The other wild creatures charge straight at him. Ranson leaps in and takes out the whole pack at once, so the rest of the men cheer for the new guy. Ranson now stands surrounded by the dead wolves. Nagi steps up to praise him, noting that a true master of the blade plays on a completely different level. He then starts to wonder what prize Count Xus will give him. Nagi insists he could have done it all by himself, but Ranson retorts that while Nagi's words are top-notch, his sword skills are pretty bad, so he needs to train harder if he wants to get stronger. Nagi nods with a bright smile. He says he must act, and so in the broken ruins of Ilneon within the city of Kushin, a camp has been raised. Burson dashes up to Ranson and demands to know why he's late. Ranson apologizes, admitting that things didn't go as planned. Burson tells him that Count Xus is there and that things are not looking good. Ranson then questions what just happened. He slides the scroll over and warns that the Count has taken the children. Ranson unrolls the scroll to read the message, but what he finds makes his blood run cold. It orders him to kill Delkashu and go back. The Blood Count Delkashu is a mighty vampire with real blood and the deadliest swordmaster ruling the city of Cassiu, serving as Cassius' sworn mortal enemy. To earn Cassius's help, they end up getting their hands dirty for him. Prince Ranson just wanted to get away with the kids and live peacefully, while Bersown sighs in regret for having stayed loyal to that terrible man for over a decade. Ranson gets ready to leave with his friends, even though one tries to hold him back by warning that Count Del Cassiu is a real vampire, while Ranson insists he can't live without his brothers despite having just come back from the dead. He then says they can't waste any more time because the kids are gone. Bersown stands firm, arguing that it's too risky because he commands vampires who are experts at their craft. Ranson then calls out his name, Sir Bersown, and says it is an order, causing the man to bow his head and accept the command by calling him Your Highness. Ranson tells Sir Bersown to stay and keep his brothers safe. He vows that he will win and come back to fix everything. Bersown watches Ranson and his friends walk away. He tightens his fist and realizes he can't obey that order this time. In the year 1337, on a cold March day, The kingdom of Venroa burns as the queen orders her people to flee while she holds back the enemy. But her knight commander Bersaun refuses to leave and vows to stay and guard her, telling her that what matters most now is keeping the royal bloodline safe. He pauses before obeying, kneeling before the second prince as she commands him to stay alive no matter what. Then she reminds him of his duty to the royal family, but the prince tells his mother he won't run away alone. So she takes off her necklace, puts it around his neck, and says it will surely help him. She makes one last plea, begging him to bring the Venroa royal family back. Bersaun vows to serve his highness even as the sky burns, barely managing to escape death with only the second prince in tow. He couldn't stop the city from burning, fled without saving the king or queen, and that terrible day was also the second prince's 13th birthday. The prince watched his family die and saw the sky turn to fire as Venroa finally fell. After 500 years of living on, the kingdom finally came to an end. They found the escape path and, alongside the last noble heirs and 20 knights, stepped forward to cross the border. On April 1st of year 1337, they set sail across a wild, churning sea. While the storm rages around them, the group finally makes it across the border into Roxium. On August 23rd of that year, they finally reached their destination and stepped into Robbers' Land, a wild place where criminals and fugitives from everywhere had gathered with no laws to follow. After 2 months of wandering through the dangerous city of Kushan, most of the knights have fallen, leaving just 12 survivors standing. Now that the second prince, Ranson, is the only true heir alongside the last noble families, they must guard them even if it means facing disgrace and suffering. Their path takes them to Count Delkashu's castle in Kashu, where a look through the window reveals a hall packed with dead bodies. Bersaun slices through the enemies guarding the castle. He presses a hand against his bleeding wound, pushes through the pain, and sprints toward his lord Ranson, praying that his master will be safe, until he bursts through a pair of doors soaked in blood. Bersaun halts his steps in shock as he gazes at the terrifying sight waiting inside. The grand throne hall lies in ruins, piled high with dead bodies. At the very top of the stairs, Delkashu is dead on his throne with a sword stuck right in his chest. Bersaun glanced around and asked what was going on. Hearing a cough, he turns to see Ranson on the stairs and shouts his name. His eyes go wide as he sees it. The prince lies on the steps, badly hurt. Ranson claims the battle is already lost. Bersaun wonders if it's really finished, then recalls his promise to the queen to keep the Venroa family safe. He wonders if all their despair and hope will truly come to an end just like that. He shakes his head with a stubborn look, refusing to let that be the end of it. He then says it can't end like this. He grips his fist tight and moves forward toward Ranson's body lying on the ground. Bersaun carries his highness on his back, driven by a fierce desire to save him. 3 years later, life carries on in the ruined city of Kushan, where 2 kids dash and play through the village while a young man with a prosthetic arm puts his muscles to work at a construction site. Ranson stops and lets Bersaun call out. Then the older man walks right up to him. From the top of the ladder, Ranson spots someone arriving. The fake leg slips off the step, and he stumbles. Bersaun steps in to check on him, but Ranson insists on knowing what the count said, and the reply is the same old routine. Wait another month. Ranson says they can hold on for now and will ask again next month. Bersaun reminds him that he had told him not to do that, but Ranson smiles and says he can't ask the children to do it. Then his companion noted that those kids had long since grown up. Even though they've grown up, Ranson starts to speak. Bersaun cuts him off and guesses he was about to say he'd protect them. Ranson ends by saying he'd regret life without the elixir, and the man nods in agreement. This ancient life-giving potion, found in the Ilnian dungeon 200 years ago, is a true miracle. He says it's just an old tale. Ranson questions how that connects to him, and Bersaun chooses to stay silent. The older man is certain that a miracle like that will never happen again. 3 young people sprint toward them, shouting for the teacher. They scream at him to watch out as a heavy thing drops from the sky. Ranson reaches up and snatches the sword right out of the air. Holding the weapon, he warns that he has just fixed the roof and won't do it again, then gives the sword back to the boy with a command never to let it go, while the boy insists he was already gripping it tightly. But Ranson says the real secret isn't squeezing the sword tight. He shows that you have to brace both legs and spread your weight across your whole body. And then, you must picture your opponent in your mind. He remembers fighting through his own tough struggle. In his mind, he saw himself trapped and bleeding. Delkashu leaped at him for the last strike. The count roared as he swung his sword with all his might. Delkashu warned that protecting others makes your mind heavy, and though the vampire ordered Ranson to die, Ranson struck the blade aside with his sword, declaring he couldn't fall because he had something to guard. Delkashu lunged at him and struck again. Blood flew all over his face as he fought back. He remembers the moment he finally struck the fatal blow against the Count. He clutches the wooden sword tight in his hand. Persona and the boy stare as the wooden beam above them snaps in two. The boy noted that Instructor Ranson ripped the wooden dummy to pieces. Ranson stares at the training dummy, which is now cut straight in half. He apologizes, explaining he only wanted to show the strike and promises to fix it. Another boy sprints toward him, shouting for Instructor Ranson. The young man rushes in shouting that Big Trouble has found Daisy and Sequelin. Ranson's face freezes in shock the moment he realizes inside the building that something is terribly wrong. He sprints down the hallway, shouting that this fight is bigger than just kids arguing because he can smell blood. Then Ranson yells out to the kids. In a grand hall, Daisy and Sequelin, both from the Ilnian family, stand locked in a sword fight, facing each other. Nagi smiles at Ranson and says, "It's been a while, brother." Ranson stares at him with a serious look, while Nagi, who serves Zixius, asks what he thinks he's doing. He then tells us they are right in the middle of an interview. Ranson keeps asking questions, refusing to let the interview end. Nagi whispered that if they prove their worth, he might just make them part of his own bloodline. He then asks why he feels so bold mixing his blood with theirs. Nagi calls him brother and admits that even becoming the lowest bloodline would be better than serving a broken, limbless man. So the protagonist asks if Count Zixius knows about this. Nagi tells his brother he's clueless about the mess and wonders if anyone with a busy schedule really cares about such small things. Ranson questions whether he ventured in on his own, despite the clear danger of entering their family's land. He admits he arrived on a rumor that the legendary swordsman Ranson lost his limbs because of a few kids. Ranson stares at what he just heard, wondering if it could be true. Nagi mocks him, daring him to say he can protect them with that frail body. He commands him to leave the kids alone and slip out quietly, or he'll kill him. Nagi then sneers at him, questioning if he even has the power to do that. Ranson lunges forward to strike, but two of Nagi's men slash their swords to block him, prompting him to shout that they are no match for a master swordsman and to warn them not to underestimate his skill. Persown shouts a warning to them not to underestimate the master swordsman as Ranson clashes swords with the two men. He then presses his hand hard against his sword's handle. With one quick move, he sends both opponents flying back. Nagi then praises Ranson, saying he is still as incredible as ever. Ranson says that these days the new guys don't have any fear. Nagi asked him to be kind, but Delkashu stepped in and reminded them that their enemy is a monster. Ranson notices that Nagi still feels a bit unsure of himself when they are together. Delkashu grins and repeats the word insecure, while asking if he's the one she feels that way about, all while Daisy and Sekhmet watch. Nagi pulls his sword from its sheath. Ranson understands he has no escape, so he gathers all his strength to end the fight with one final blow. Suddenly, Ranson leaps forward and hits Nagi. Nagi slashes with his sword to block Ranson's hit, yet Ranson insists he's already caught Nagi. Then he goes on a wild streak, raining down blow after blow. Nagi meets the attack with one swift slash until his blade clashes directly against the other. Ranson's blade breaks on impact, and Nagi reveals his core is destroyed, only for Ranson to wonder if Nagi really thought he'd ever reach the top. Nagi lifts his sword and shouts that this proves why bloodlines are the best. He looks at Ranson and asks what he should do next. Nagi then suggests taking them out one by one as Daisy and Sekhmet stare at him. Barsound grips his sword tighter, knowing he'll lose if a fight breaks out. He then puts his weapon away safely. Barsound just shouts out to Nagi. Ranson tells him to stop right there, saying there are kids who need protecting. Nagi just chuckles and asks what that is supposed to be, then wonders if the great swordsman Ranson is begging him. Ranson confesses that he knows him very well. He knows Nagi wants to crush him and watch him fall. Then Nagi sheathes his sword and declares he won't let him escape so easily. He cracks his knuckles and admits he needs to stretch just a bit more. Nagi lands a solid punch right on Ranson's face. He comes back with one more hit. Ranson hits the ground hard as he crashes down. He steps on Ranson's head right as Ranson tries to speak. After a long time, Ranson finally finds the words to say he is sorry. Nagi's face softened into a bright smile. He then warns them not to hold back on him. Nagi calls the day's adventure to a close, promising to pick up the trail again tomorrow. Two boys walk up to the fallen Ranson to ask what they should do now that he is gone, but he simply says everything is fine because he was enough to protect them. Later, in a room, Ranson questions Daisy and Sequelin about their motives, and asks if they were really trying to become blood relatives. Sequelin bows his head and asks his master for forgiveness. Daisy stays quiet with her arms crossed while the boy kneels right beside her. Ranson leans in and asks if she has nothing to say at all. He then asks her what she just said. Daisy asks why she can't serve under Cassius, reminding him that he was once her servant too. She then asks him if he's forgotten. Ranson explains that Cassius's hungry need to become a vampire cost his friends and families their lives, and after asking if she now wants to crawl beneath him and live by drinking blood, he waits for her answer. Daisy jumps to her feet and fires back, wondering why it matters to him and if he's actually her dad. She tells him she will handle her own life and demands he stop meddling so they can both live their own stories. Ranson shouts her name as she dashes out of the room. Seclian shouts for his master and explains that Daisy had no bad intentions. Ransom knows and he says it loud and clear. Seclian keeps saying that it takes real guts to kneel when things are this tough. He then tells Ransom that he must be in terrible pain. Seclian promises to go ask Uncle Burson for a potion. Ransom gives thanks as the young man walks away. Suddenly Burson bursts in to ask if Ransom is okay, and Ransom immediately asks him what happened. Burson starts to explain that Lena had told him something earlier. She learned from Daisy that Ransom and Nagi were fighting and someone might get hurt, so the girl ran to him to ask for help. Lena just shouts for her uncle, and when she asks why he spoke up since Daisy begged him to keep it quiet, Burson agrees. Ransom chuckles at the mess and soon can't help but laugh out loud. He thanks everyone for their kindness as Burson hands him a potion. Ransom grabs the vial, thanks Daisy, and then, all by himself, he coughs while wishing he had kept his core so he could have fought Nagi. The camera follows two kids sprinting joyfully through the outdoors. He then changes his mind, saying that just keeping the children safe is already enough. Ransom worries about what to do until Nagi comes back the next day, so he decides he has no choice but to use the object in his hand. Ransom slams the object in his hand into action. So he makes the hard choice to sell a priceless royal treasure from the Van Roya family to get the money needed to keep the children safe. He realizes the royal seal could be tracked, so he decides the only thing worth selling is something else. Finally, he reaches into the swirling portal and pulls out the Book of Destiny. Ransom lifts the book and wonders why it's called a royal treasure. Then ancient symbols float off the pages, showing a date from the Ruzura's calendar and marking the secret chapel where cultists gather, surrounded by those same strange marks. He is shocked to suddenly understand the old words, and then the book wraps him up like a warm blanket. Suddenly, a medallion shaped like a star pops into view. The empty room vanishes, and suddenly Ransom finds himself running with a crowd, confused and asking why he is there instead of reading the Book of Destiny. He halts and understands that he has truly arrived at a real place, not just a dream. He knows this place is the IL Neon Dungeon, yet he can't shake the feeling that it looks brand new. The group halts and he wonders what's going on and who those people might be. A hooded man shouts that someone has broken into the chapel. He then commands them to grab the elixir and make it safe first. When Ranson hears the word elixir, his reaction is immediate. He realizes the structure is the same as the IL Neon Dungeon, and that's where they dug up the elixir back in the Ruzura's calendar year. This means he has leaped 10,000 years back in time to watch the hooded figures walk up to the altar where the elixir sits waiting. Ranson watches the scene unfold and knows it is all real. One of the men grabs a small vial and declares that the magical drink is safe, proving he has truly made it back to the past. Ranson realizes that if he can get his hands on the elixir, he can finally take back everything he has lost. He then counted 12 people standing all around him. He grips his sword tighter, wondering if he should kill everyone to take the elixir, but one man stops him and orders them to split into pairs to hunt down the intruder instead, sending Kaltik and Crumb down the east passage while Serum and Toten head west. He sends Saruiz and Ranson through the northern passage, and Ranson is shocked that someone from the past knows his name and sees him as a friend. Ranson realizes only a powerful mind-altering magic could explain this and wonders about the true Book of Destiny, but his new partner calls him out for standing there doing nothing, urging him to hurry. Ranson decides to quietly gather what he can and wait for the right moment to strike. As the two walk down the corridor together, they suddenly meet a woman who lunges forward and attacks his partner. He knocks her out in one swift move. The attacker spins around to face Ranson. Ranson looks at the clear path left by the hit and wonders what it means. The man swings at Ranson, but the hero slashes his blade across the attack to stop it. He squeezes his weapon tight, then Ranson shoves him back in one swift move, shaking his head at how poorly the sword holds up. The attacker isn't sure if he's facing a sword's deadly energy or something even stranger. Ransom finally gets that he isn't the only one who thinks things are strange. He then makes one final attempt, drawing his sword to see if it will work. Suddenly, it all clicks for him in an instant. Two kids sneak out from behind a pillar. They chase Ransom as he demands to know why they are there, and the man guarding the children rebukes him for having no shame about teaming up with cultists who kidnap kids. She asks him if he intends to snatch children to sacrifice as living offerings. Then the scene changes to show Burson serving dinner to his family. Ransom is also sitting at the table with a smile on his face. Back in the present, more cultists rush to the scene and beg to know what just happened. They ask Ransom if Serwis was beaten by the intruder, and he confirms it. The leader shouts for them to team up, and then the cultists surge forward in a united assault. The woman jumps back in shock when the attack happens just as the kids hide. Ransom looks at her and tells her they need to stand together. Two cultists sprint down the hall straight at them. One of them points at the fight and yells that he found them. He wonders if Ransom was ambushed and tells his team to go help him. The woman blocks Ransom's blade by crossing her own sword with his. Ransom just stands there and watches what's happening. Next, he lunges at a cultist and strikes them from behind. Ransom stabs him, and the cultist screams that he's a traitor. Ransom stood over the man's body, thanking her for the little trick that made killing him so easy. He says the man charged at him without thinking, so he just fought back to stay alive. Then Ransom asks her to keep helping him exactly as she is now. A cult leader steps up, saying he can't figure out the guy, then halts before the fallen bodies to ask Ransom if that was a betrayal. The cultist says that the bitter ghost of someone betrayed isn't evil at all. Ransom and the woman watch him, realizing that his chaotic betrayal will please the noble lord even more, while she worries that failing to call for help was a mistake, since she didn't expect such a dangerous expert to show up. She quickly glances to the side. The kids shrink back and hide behind her. She then corrects herself and says she's actually just a middle-of-the-road expert. The woman confesses she can't beat him by herself and suggests hitting first so Ransom can find his chance. She lunges forward to strike the cultist, but he catches her blow and knocks her back with a punch. She readies herself to strike back, but he slips away just in time to dodge her blade. The cultist smiles and gets ready to strike the final blow. She just looks up at the attack that's coming right now. Ransom keeps a close eye on everything that happens. Then, as he steps forward, Ransom rockets ahead in a blur and sweeps a spinning slash at the cultist. The artifact stops Ransom's attack, and the woman watches the scene unfold. Then she dashes in to fight the cultist. He smiles and asks if she thought he'd have died without it. Ransom stands his ground and fights back against the cultists. Ransom barely manages to block the strikes, completely unable to guess where the sword will hit next. She steps up behind the cultist to strike him. She lunges at him, but he spins around to catch her blow right before it hits. Then the woman spins back to Ransom and demands to know what he's doing. She wonders why he is so weak, and he just stares at his own hand. The cultist sneers at him, mocking his skills and claiming his powerful technique is useless since he's just a mediocre swordsman. He strikes her with such force that she is sent flying backward. The cultist readies another strike, saying goodbye to Ransom, who remembers all the hard work he did under Count Cassius. Then Ransom realizes exactly how ineffective a mediocre attack can be. He then spins his aura threads to weave his plan. Ransom charges forward, slashing at the cultist with his blade. The man is shocked to find Ransom's power has jumped to a whole new level, so he crashes into him to fight back. Ransom slams a giant hand made of his own power into the cultist, knocking him down. He stares at Ransom, who then stabs him in the chest, but the sword breaks and he falls, while the woman watches from afar. Ransom stands up over the cultist's body and asks, "Who are you?" Next, he drops to his knees and starts rummaging through the man's clothes. Ransom spots a tiny wooden box sitting there. He opens it, sees the elixir inside, and says that it is there. Ransom reaches for the vial and gets ready to drink what's inside. She asked him what he was up to. As she calls out to him, the cultist's body crumbles into tiny specks of dust. A golden pocket watch suddenly springs into view. The story moves to old ruins bathed in moonlight. Daisy stood outside, puzzled and wondering where her brother could have gone so late at night. She tells Burson she must apologize to Ransom, even though it's too late. Daisy walked toward the house, wondering if he had already come back. Her eyes go wide as she spots Ransom lying on the ground. The girl shouts for her brother. Ransom lies unconscious, clutching the wooden box tightly. Daisy and Burson stand quietly by Ransom's bed, watching him. She promises to remain by his side, and Burson asks to be told the moment he wakes up. Daisy gives a simple nod to agree, and then she stays alone to keep an eye on him. Ransom lies still and unaware on the bed, his body battered by the wounds he suffered. She watches him closely for a beat before Ransom suddenly shifts on the bed. He lifts his fake hand and insists he never had a single drink. Then he suddenly wakes up gasping for air. Ransom stares down at his own hand, looking puzzled by what he sees. Then he turns around and sees that Daisy is there. With relief, she calls out to him as brother, asking what happened, why he vanished, and why he was covered in blood. He stays quiet, which leaves her wondering why he won't say a word. Ransom sits up and asks why she's staring at him, reminding her that he's her brother. She tries to deny it because she's embarrassed, but he shows her swollen eyes and cheeks to prove she's been crying. Ranson smiles and jokes if she really was worried, and Daisy admits it but asks if she shouldn't have been. So he thanks her and pats her head, only for her to complain that she's not a kid anymore. Ranson realizes it's been ages since he played with Daisy like that, but then he suddenly grabs his head and stumbles. She panics and screams his name just as he leans over the edge of the bed. Ranson stared at his hand and knew with a jolt that this wasn't a dream, but reality. Daisy asks him about his body and then takes off his fake arm. Ranson rises and shouts that his body is back, then stumbles forward, declaring he has returned. Then he falls to the ground and Daisy lets out a scream, calling his name. People are shouting that his arms and legs have grown back, and they're warning him not to pull on his arm. Ranson slowly opens his eyes, feeling confused. Bersown, Daisy, Sekhmet, and little Lena all stare down at him. Bersown turns to Ranson and asks how such a miracle could possibly have happened. He tells us he drank a special potion, leaving Bersown stunned when he learns it cost a massive 50,000 dalens for just one drink. Ranson says he needs to check something first, so he lifts the blanket. Bersown asks if he can move, and Ranson replies that he will need some time to recover but says he'll be okay. He walks over to the dresser and lifts a tiny wooden box. Ranson asks Bersown to go with him, and Bersown agrees, so they stand together looking at the empty altar where the elixir used to be. Bersown asks him what's happening, and Ranson admits he can't believe it either. He lifts the box lid to find a key inside and tells us he needs to check something. The memories reveal that guards went extra strong to protect the key. This realization shows him that it is the key to unlocking a hidden secret space. He lifts the key, and a summoning circle springs into view. Suddenly, a circle quickly grew around the two of them, and Ranson couldn't help but wonder just what it was. Suddenly, a hidden room opens before them, filled with treasures and a cloaked mannequin. Gold coins worth 5,000 dalens wait alongside ancient swords, armor, and even simple tools. Bersown asks Ranson how he went from having his limbs grow back to this new problem. Ranson presses a hand to the back of his neck and admits he can't believe what's happening either. Ranson admits he went to that exact spot 10,000 years ago, leaving Bersown stunned until he finally realizes it all truly happened. Ranson wonders if the artifact's power lets him keep going back to the past and shouts for Bersown that he needs to do one last thing first. In another place, Delkashu beams with pure satisfaction. He lies stretched out on a bed while bodies cover the floor around him, declaring that this is what living means, then shouts for Ranson to ask if they should head out to see that trash. As soon as he pushes the door open, he is immediately staring at Ranson and demands to know what that thing is. Nagi wonders if Ranson came just to say hello, but his curiosity turns to concern when he sees that Ranson's arms and legs look strange. Nagi shouts at his men to run and tell the Lord that Ranson has reclaimed his core. Ranson draws his sword and rushes forward with a fast slash that catches one of Nagi's men off guard, hitting him right in the chest, while the other man is struck the same way. Nagi stared at him, completely baffled by how that could have happened. Ranson digs his fingers in deeper and lunges straight for Nagi. He dashes down the hallway, fists ready to strike. Nagi draws his blade to protect himself and then holds the blow from Ranson. He grinned and asked if Ranson meant to swing an invisible aura thread instead of a real sword. Nagi notices that Ranson's heart is still broken and hasn't healed completely yet. Ranson holds his sword tight. He just asks, "So what?" And then Ranson readies himself to strike again. Nagi steps into a fighting pose and declares that he has changed from 3 years ago, now standing as an E-class noble. He brags that his body is stronger than anyone else's and that he can heal from any injury without ever dying. He would be a real match even for the best sword fighter in the world. Ranson's fierce attack surges straight toward Nagi. The blow hits him straight on, cutting Nagi's head off with a single slash of the sword. After the headless body melts into dust before Ranson, he kneels to admit his core is back, but his aura is still gone. So when Daisy later asks if he really went back in time to drink the elixir, he knows it wasn't real. Ranson confirms the tale, revealing that he used a treasure from the Van Rua royal family to slip back into the past. Bersown asks if he can come back, but Ranson says he doesn't know because the item stopped reacting. So a woman named Say Malin suggests that maybe an old magic artifact could make it happen. Ranson wondered if something so tiny could really hold a god's power, even if the tech was old. Daisy cuts him off to point out the absurdity of drinking a potion discovered just 200 years ago, when he claims to have taken it 10,000 years ago. He suddenly understands she was right and shouts it out, leaving her puzzled, while Ranson recalls he only drank half the potion before turning back. He asks Berson if anyone knows why only half of the elixir was found, but Berson says he has never heard that part of it went missing. With his hands up, Ranson admits that there is simply no way to know what happened. They wonder if the magic drink was ever truly whole, or if history was changed because Ranson drank half of it. Similin warns him that returning to the past could change everything in the world. Ranson pauses to think about what he would want to fix if he could change the past. He wants to take revenge for the night his family vanished, while his job as the last Venroa royal is to rebuild his kingdom. But Ranson says that to make that happen, he's got to kill Count Sirius first. He remembers thinking that becoming a servant to the Lord of Kushan would keep his family safe, but now he knows that happiness given by someone else can never be truly secure. Similin warns him that Count Sirius is incredibly powerful now that he has already mastered the sword and taken Delkashu's true blood. Ranson insists this isn't an option and wonders how Sirius will react when he realizes just how crazy he's become. Sitting around the table, he says this fight is something everyone has to face. He tells them they have just 3 weeks to get the tax report ready for Count Sirius. Ranson insists with certainty that they must sort this out before the time runs out. Ranson practices his sword alone in a broken arena, his mind replaying the fighting style of the cult members from 10,000 years ago. It was a steady, strong move that cut through everything. While a cultist laughed at Ranson for being a mediocre swordsman who couldn't read his aura blade like a mind, Ranson felt he wasn't just talking to the weapon, but had finally become the sword itself. He opened his eyes and suddenly saw the world in a completely new way. He tightens his grip on the weapon and says that he finally gets it. Ranson says it's definitely not an aura. Daisy rushes toward him, screaming that something bad has happened. The very sound of Count Xuza's name makes him jump to attention. Inside the Great Hall, a man tells the Lord that Ranson's family will arrive at the castle in 3 days. Delkashu says he has waited a long time for the nobles of Venrotha, and now that moment has finally arrived to sacrifice them. Ranson realizes there are only 3 weeks left before the tax deadline, and the Count suddenly invites them. Burson suggests the Count may have found out Nagi is dead, but Ranson disagrees, thinking the Count would just blame the rebels instead. So say Milan steps in to point out that the true problem is their secret plan to kill the Count was ruined by the sudden invitation. She lets slip that their only hope lay in the moment Count Xuz performed his ritual, which immediately sparked Ranson's curiosity. Say Milan reveals that after his brother's tragedy, the Count now leaves the castle once a month to perform a lonely ritual all by himself. Daisy says she also saw Xuz's men stealing the children. Say Milan ends his tale by saying that villages that couldn't pay their taxes were wiped out, and everyone from the old to the young was given as a sacrifice. Ranson questions why he would prepare dead bodies and living sacrifices to humble himself before a being he cannot even understand, and he mourns how everything has changed while he lay helpless at home with his broken limbs. Then Ranson asks Say Milan how she knows so much about it. She just says she has a network of contacts, but he gets upset and asks how she went to that dangerous city all by herself. Say Milan just confirms that their plan has been completely ruined. Burson says Sia is 20 and grown up, but Ranson pushes back, warning that walking the city alone is still too dangerous for her. Daisy then calls him brother and asks if he can truly defeat Xuz. Gripping his sword tightly, Ranson insists he has no choice, then sets the blade on the table to show it's their only hope. Burson knows it is the king's sword, a blade made from heavenly silver steel and powered by a special aura. Ranson lifts the blade and declares that no evil creature, like a vampire, can survive its touch. Similaun tells him she trusts him so much that if they fail, they'll just die together, and he looks totally surprised. She shuts her eyes tight and claims she was just kidding. Similaun decides that no matter what, they've got to find a new way to take out Count Sirius. Ranson admits it's a dangerous move, but right now it might be our only way out. The story moves to the village of Rera, where a group of kids dash across a field. One boy holds up a huge mushroom he found, only for his friend to claim his own is even bigger. One of them, buzzing with excitement, bolts to suggest they head home to find out which one is bigger. Suddenly the whole village bursts into flames, and the scared villagers stand there wondering what could possibly be happening. A knight swings his sword and strikes down one of the villagers. A soldier sneaks up and stabs a man in the back. Then they just toss the body onto a cart without any ceremony. The knights stare at the ruin they've made, spot the children, and command that no one gets away. A squad of soldiers marched up toward the boys. The boys are trapped with no way out as the knights close in. Suddenly, an arrow shoots forward with incredible speed. The flying object hits a knight right on the head. More arrows shoot down 2 more soldiers right away. The kids stare in shock at the direction the shots came from. An archer walks up and asks if everyone is okay. One of the boys asks who he is, and he replies, "I am Liber Pete Randa." The kids muttered the name over and over, looking lost. Then they realize he is the Baron. Randa tells us they'll chat about it all later. For now, he says they must leave that spot. But when one of the boys cries out that his mother is still there, Randa grabs them and drags them away from the fire. He sees that killing more and more of his men won't stop them. Randa watches the village burn and realizes the Count has gone too far to ever come back. The scene changes to the Count's castle, bathed in the bright light of a full moon. Inside the walls, carts lined up with covered bodies wait patiently. A soldier stood guard over the line of carts. Delkashu learns from his subordinate that 116 bodies have been brought in, far exceeding the number they were supposed to deliver. Delkashu promises to handle everything else, sends the other man away, and then walks over to a body to pull back the sheet covering it. He climbs up from one of the bodies and wipes his mouth. He smiles and says that Ranson's group will enter the palace tomorrow, and the moment he has waited for is finally here. Then he turns to leave the pile of bodies, but a hand slips out from under a sheet, making him stop and spin around as a sword flashes up and blasts a wave of energy at him from the cart. Earlier, Sia Milan told her brother that intelligence reports say the bodies from Ruera are being moved today, so he must pretend to be dead and sneak into the cart. That way, he'd be brought straight to the Count and would have to hold back his magic until the right moment. We waited for the Count to relax his guard before striking. Delkashu blocks the blow and demands to know why he arrived without warning. Ranson pushed hard against his own doubt and finally admitted that he knew it wouldn't be easy. Delkashu noticed Ranson's body had healed and guessed he must have found a magic healing drink. Ranson sees that their plan has run out and they will soon have to face each other. Delkashu readies himself for battle and shouts a challenge, inviting him to taste a delicious despair. Ranson steadies himself and grips his sword, feeling the bond between him and the blade while his eyes sharpen to see its very soul. Then the two rush at each other and their swords crash together. Delkashu is thrown flying by the crash, but he quickly bounces back to strike wide with a powerful horizontal blow. Ranson leaps out of the way, hits the ground, and spins around to face his enemy again. Delkashu rushes at him again. Ranson gets ready to make his next move. Delkashu locks eyes with him and stares so hard it feels like she could burn him with just her gaze. Ranson skids across the floor, just barely missing the attack as it whizzes right past him. He twists his body and swings his blade at Delkashu's neck, but the vampire catches the metal just in time to stop the cut. Delkashu said it was amazing because if his aura had been any weaker, his neck would have been cut off. He adds that this was to be expected from the kingdom of Benroa. A new voice claims he is the long-missing second prince of Benroa, whose body was never found. Delkashu just remarks on how precious that is. He then says that by giving up such a precious soul, his wish will surely come true. Ranson sweeps forward with a mighty, curving blow. Delkashu sighs and says it's no use, no matter how many times he tries. He then blocks the blade with his hand and claims that the sword will never pierce his aura. Ranson pushes his sharp blade even tighter into Delkashu's hand. Then their powers crash together, sending a huge explosion everywhere. While chaos stirs elsewhere, the rest of the city sleeps peacefully beneath the full moon's glow. Nagi sits at a table outside a tavern with a companion. His men come up and want to know why he called them. One of them asks if he's going to start a big fight. Nagi shakes his head to say no, but adds that he heard news of something strange coming up. Then one of the group members asks what kind of news he got. Suddenly, everyone freezes as a huge shake shakes the ground beneath them. From afar, they watch two powerful forces crash together and wonder if Count Celsius is battling a foe, prompting the men to ask if this is what the chief meant and who his enemy might be. Nagi pulls out his spyglass to see who would dare be so bold, then hands it to one of his men to check it out. The man peered through his spyglass and spotted the man fighting in the crowd. Shocked, he starts to wonder if that really is Ranson. Nagi leans in to ask exactly what he heard, wondering if Ranson really did pull through. In the shadows of the dark room, C. Milan whispers that this is the only shot he'll get before it's gone forever. She tells him to pause and think hard now so he won't spend the rest of his life wishing he had. Back in the present, Nagi stays quiet while his men wonder if they're just supposed to keep watching. An image shows a brave archer standing guard over a group of scared children. Then the friends decide they have to jump in too. He turns to his men to apologize just as Ranson and Delkashu's blades crash together in a violent clash. Ranson gathers his strength and steps forward ready to strike his opponent again. Delkashu reaches out and stops the sword with his bare hand. Ranson pulls back to get ready for his next big attack. Delkashu reacts just as the sharp blade finally cuts through his guard. A sharp cut slices open his neck, and he reaches out to touch the wound. He then squeezes his fist tight and shouts an angry curse at the boy. The bright full moon lights up the top of the broken castle. Delkashu feels his own neck and calls his opponent's sword skills amazing. Ranson just keeps staring at him, saying nothing at all. Then the vampire thinks that maybe someday he will get caught. He knows he can't keep taking hits forever since other vampires are stepping up behind him. The vampires surge forward on Ranson, who slashes down one of them, then shouts in rage that hiding among the dead only led him to face XY Russ alone. Ranson sees that they never stop. If he keeps going like this, He'll be too tired to defeat XY Russ before he even tries. A vampire lunges at him, striking with a sudden, swift blow. He twists away just in time, feeling the cold edge slice through the air right next to his cheek. Ranson knows he has to rush and take care of them. Another vampire readies a swift strike from above to hit him. Ranson freezes in shock as an arrow whistles through the air, shattering the vampire's head and sending his body crashing to the ground. The other vampires react instantly as they recognize the holy glow coming from the silver arrow. Ranson spins around to see who fired the shot. He spots Liber Pietranda standing ready with his bow, while a young man beside him waves and shouts that they've arrived too. Ranson calls out Jalran by name, and then he notices Seem Milan walking toward them. Soon after, Daisy shows up too, leaving him shocked to see Seklin there as well. A group of men moves forward with their leader screaming that everyone should die because all his targets are finally here. Liber Pete raises his bow and aims it again. Seem Milan reaches her hand out. Jalran looses his arrows and brings two vampires crashing down at once. Daisy and Sekhmet join forces to stand together against the enemies and defend themselves. Ransom wonders why everyone is there, scared that they might get hurt. Daisy tells him he doesn't have to carry the whole weight alone since all of us are here. She says they must stand together and face whatever comes next. Jalran nods with excitement and tells his brother to count only. Ransom looks at his friend and responds to what he just said. He knows it's finally time to stop treating them like kids. His eyes lock on with the sharp, determined look of someone ready to fight. Ransom lifts his sword and shouts that he must face a troublesome bastard. Delcajo wonders if he should rip off his own arm, only for the vampire's limb to swell up and sprout dangerous claws. Delcajo lunges with his powerful new arm, but Ransom stands firm and stops the attack with his sword. He quickly covers his neck with a glowing shield that pushes back the vampire's strike, but the resulting blast shatters his arm completely. He stares at his own shoulder and wonders what just happened. Ransom lifts the broken necklace and yells that it is the magic charm that keeps them safe. The necklace he found in the ruins breaks apart on the ground, having done its job. Delcajo looks at him, leaving a gap after his full attack. Ransom grabs the chance to play his secret ace, declaring that his heart and the sword's heart are now one before he charges forward to strike. Ransom unleashes a fierce whirlwind attack, but a masked man reveals himself to ask how he dares, then roars that Ransom will die as he unleashes his own power. Ransom's crazy spin knocks away the punch aimed at him. Zixius gets hit straight on by the attack. A crack splits open at his neck as the blows keep coming, and through that gap, Ransom readies himself for the final strike. He dives ahead with a sharp, aimed strike. The strike strikes Zixius right in the neck. Ransom stayed frozen in his spot, breathing hard after one last move. Ransom stands there as Zixius collapses to the ground. The vampire lord's head rolled across the floor, defeated. Fallen Seus leans in and wonders if that glowing edge is truly a soul blade. The young man admits he only tried to combine the ancient sword's key with an aura blade. He then paused to wonder if that really was a soul blade, the mark of a grandmaster. Out of nowhere, one of the last vampires grabs his chest and lets out a loud scream. Daisy and Jaren watched in silence as the other vampires fell one by one. Nagi's men are confused, unsure if they are dying from shock or if something terrible is happening. As Ranson watches Seus's body vanish in dust, the archer calls out, "Sir Ranson," and Liber Pete confirms that Seus is truly gone. Liber Pete says the records show that if a vampire loses their maker, they go blind and deaf for a day or two. Ranson asks if they'll heal in a few days, and the archer nods that now is the perfect time to wipe out the last of the enemies, only for Ranson to smile and laugh that the archer is the one who should be asking for permission. Liber Pete bows and gives thanks, saying that thanks to him, they finally got revenge for their fallen friends. Ranson watches him with a faint smile, reaches out his hand, and promises to count on him to build the city into a better home for everyone. He explains that he has no choice but to reveal the Pietro family crest right now because of his sudden arrival, and tells that his family was once part of Gloryland's nobility 300 years ago. Liber Pete presses the crest into his hands and tells him to take it. The archer drops to his knees and promises that from now on, he will be his lord's loyal servant. Simulin says from a distance that she knew he'd go so far as to hand him his crest. Ranson asks Simulin if she knows Liber Pete well, and she explains that she gets her info straight from him through his own contacts. He stares at her with wide eyes, shocked by what he sees. He asks her if she worked with rebels, and she admits she only helped a tiny bit. Simulin advises us to let Sir Liber Pete handle everything else while we hunt for proof of the Count's wrongdoing. She says that as the Count gets discredited, the people's support grows even stronger. Ranson nods in agreement with the plan. After Cesus passed away, The people of Kushin had to unite their community and business leaders into a special team to find the truth and gather proof. Ranson and C. Milan step into a chapel, and he pauses to ask if this is the right place. The two peers inside the vast hall. As they strolled through the area, she noted that there was nothing important to be found there. He points to a statue, saying it feels cold and creepy, but C. Milan points elsewhere and asks what that is just as something on Ranson's chest starts to move. Ranson grips the artifact and wonders why it suddenly glows, only for it to blast unstable energy right in front of him. A book suddenly forms out of the swirling energy, and he sees it glowing once more, just as it had before. C. Milan wants to open the Book of Destiny, but Ranson refuses because doing so could send them back in time and cause everyone to fight over the land. Yet when C. Milan agrees to put it away, the book suddenly flies out of his hand and opens on its own in midair. A blinding light wraps around him just as the book reveals a message. He discovers himself sitting in a moving carriage beneath a bright, sunny sky, with an image of a six-pointed star medallion before him. He covers his face, realizes he's been thrown back in time, looks around at the vast green field, and wonders where he is as the carriage rolls on. He watches the hooded strangers in the carriage and realizes he is no longer alone, but something about one of his new companions feels strange. Ranson feels the heavy pressure coming from the man sitting right in front of him. The man glances at him, asks if he has woken up, calls out his name, and realizes he is facing a being far beyond the heretical leader he once fought. So his hand instantly reaches for his sword. Ranson suddenly understands that it is not merely that man's presence causing it. He realizes that the mana all around him is spinning in a way that makes no sense, even for a Grand Master. The man then steps forward and shares that they met by luck and that he took Ranson on as his student. Ranson knows that this time he is truly that man's disciple. Ranson asks when he became his disciple, and the man replies that it was just a week ago. He grinned and said it felt like a miracle straight from the gods. Ranson asks for forgiveness and sees how this man, Archduke Rotena Celsius, looks different from the cultists, declaring his goal to wipe them out and reminding Ranson that he became his disciple just a week ago. Now they're heading to his castle, where the young man will start his training. Ranson feels it's odd that he's having to explain everything to him. Celsius promises to watch over the young man and pray for his dreams to come true. But when Ranson suddenly realizes the truth, Celsius immediately asks if he's already figured it all out. Ranson can't stop wondering what's going on in the world, and he finds Celsius's unexpected kindness very strange, especially since he usually sees him as an oddity and isn't sure if he knows something important. Ranson then says that joining the master is also an honor for him and asks if he really feels okay about it since he doesn't even know who he is. Celsius admits it's fascinating but insists that what's happening now, mixed with his own goals, might be a promise he made long ago while Ranson reacts without getting it. Celsius confesses that even he isn't sure, saying it's just a feeling he has. Ranson wonders if he really means just a feeling. Then Celsius puts a hand on his shoulder while the carriage rolls on, leaving Ranson more confused than ever. They walk right up to a huge gate. Finally, the carriage rolls into the shimmering city made of steel. Ranson notices that somehow he's found himself right there. Celsius then shows us his home, a city of knights made of glowing steel. Celsius admits that even though he is the Archduke, he lets his team run things so he can train the next generation of scholars. As they journeyed, he quietly showed Ranson the rules and customs of that long ago time. Thanks to him, Ranson slowly got used to life there and stopped worrying about going home, choosing instead to live in the moment. He knows the technology and sword skills there are far ahead, so he has to make sure he learns something from it just like before. Celsius tells him that the castle they are heading to is where he has another student. He tells us about an honest young man Ranson will meet before they finally reach the big castle. As soon as they arrived, Ranson and a blonde woman were shocked to see each other. Celsius steps right between the two and asks if they know each other. Iden Serum says yes and reminds her master that he is the man who saved her from the cultists at the chapel about a year ago. Celsius remembers she mentioned the man's strange sword key, and she says it's the right one. He then says it's lucky they know each other since Ranson is now her junior and he expects her to teach him well, while Celsius explains that he took Ranson as his disciple but has been incredibly busy lately. Celsius decides to teach him for now, then takes his leave to discuss matters with the magistrates and move ahead on his own. Ranson can hardly believe the strange situation he's in as the Archduke's disciple, only for a blonde woman to stare at him in surprise before cutting him off with a sharp question about what he's doing. She puts her hands on her hips and asks if that is the right way to greet a senior, and he sees that she is already stepping up in the ranks. Iden Serum tells him that no matter his past, he is now one of only 2 disciples the master has, standing beside her. She asks if she's mistaken, and he admits she's right. Then she tells him to watch his steps so he never brings shame to their master, even though he finds her strict rules about keeping a neat look and good behavior quite demanding. She points to his dirty boots and asks when he last polished them, then notices his cloak is crooked. And in the end, she finally asks him why his hair looks so strange. She scolds him, saying that if he acts like that, he is no better than a bandit. She asked what it was and why he kept staring at her hair. Ransom pointed to his own hair and asked if she could say something about hers too. Yoden's serum touches her hair, then quickly steps back as everyone watches. As they step through the courtyard, the woman introduces herself as Yoden's serum. She also serves in the Archduke's Royal Guard, known as the Knights of the Horizon. Iden admits he might be stronger, but she warns him the master says he can't yet control his sword ki. So she grips her hilt and declares that true skill comes only from facing each other directly before drawing her blade and telling him to draw his so their senior can teach him the way of the sword. Ransom finally got it why he had been urgently summoned to the training field. Iden says she isn't acting out of past embarrassment and asks him not to get the wrong idea. He nods, pulls his sword, and declares that words have no place when a blade is drawn. The Iden serum tells us that since they can't control mana, they put all their energy into the spirit of the sword. She says the sword spirit has just one mind. Then Iden proves he means business by charging straight ahead to strike. Ransom watches every step she takes with great care. As the two swords smash together with a mighty crash, he blocks his instructor's blow. Then she shows that mana just pools together whenever that will calls for it. Then he realizes this is something totally new. Yoden says that controlling mana directly would be a big plus, but she reminds him that mastery is the foundation and mana is just the roof you build on top of it. Laying down a rock-solid base is the one thing that truly matters. Yoden then challenges him to try and lift the sword's aura. Ransom focuses his mind, and a surge of energy starts to swirl around his blade. After trying hard, Ransom finally gets it and tells us he understands. Iden Siram watched his blade with close attention. Then she turns and hands her sword to the young man. Iden invites him to try lifting the aura with her sword too. He gets ready to face the new challenge. Ransom stared at the blade, confused by its strange behavior and wondering why it acted so oddly. Iden nods, saying it's just as she hoped, while the instructor explains that a sword's aura is simply the blade's spiritual power coming to life. That's why he won before, for his new blade hums with far greater spirit. She looks at him like he's just a beginner, and that leaves him feeling shocked. Iden shows that this level is where you read the sword's path and swing it along it. Ransom's first challenge is learning to let his power flow through any blade he holds. Then she announces that everyone will gather that night for a special training session. After the training, Ransom lies exhausted in the middle of the courtyard. Iden calls out his name as he rolls across the ground. She wonders if the ground was meant to be his bed. The instructor warns him not to let his master down and to stay sharp. Iden questions why Ransom is dressed in yesterday's clothes, and Ransom explains that he never slept. He rose to his feet, gripped his sword with steely resolve, and a surge of energy began to wrap around the blade. Ransom swings his blade with a mighty crack through the air. His master watches with total shock at what he just saw. He says he stayed up all night practicing, which is why he finally managed something he couldn't do before. Iden retorts that no matter how talented someone is, they couldn't do that in less than a week. Even so, she congratulates him and tells him they can move on to the next level, so Ransom asks her to start the training right away. Then the two warriors clash in a fierce battle right in the courtyard. Ransom charges in with all his might, but Iden stands firm and stops the blow. She stands firm against his fierce attacks, and then they trade blows rapidly as he pushes her hard. Two people watching can't believe how Ransom acts. One of them sees that Iden is being pushed back, and the instructor notes that he's even using his sword for support. Iden then springs into the air and dives straight at him for a sky-high strike. He watches her every move with care. Her blade halts mere centimeters from Ransom's neck. He can't figure out how she moved so fast. After the fight, Iden tosses her sword high into the air. She says this is the sword specialist level, where the blade moves by itself. Ransom soon realizes there is a moment when the sword moves before his mind even has time to think. Iden tells him that in 2 weeks, there will be an exchange event with a duel planned. As you'd expect, everyone turns their gaze toward Ransom van Roa, the Archduke Retina's own chosen student. Iden insists he has to push forward one final step before that time comes. Ransom smiles and nods, saying it's exactly what we should have seen all along. He then shouts that this is the fun part. A voice sneered at the man, Retina, and he asked how he had taken in an orphan who is now a vagrant with no known identity. Suddenly, Cassius Celsius steps out to challenge Retina for letting random strangers become her pupils. Cassius Celsius claims the Grand Duke is a terrible judge of character, and that the position should have gone to him instead. Iden warns him to keep his voice down since everyone is listening, then questions if she's just lecturing him because Retina named him her successor. Cassius keeps talking, insisting that she is just an advanced specialist despite everything he has done for her. Ranson, a clumsy beginner with no real skill, demands to see the treasure Retina took, but Iodine refuses to show it to him. Cassius asks again if she's trying to preach a sermon to him. Ranson sees Iodine holding her ground and calls for her master, then offers to let Cassius double-check if Retina was right. The man asks him questions, clearly confused by the offer. Ranson says they should fight if he isn't confident in his sword skills. Iodine tries to stop him, but Cassius scoffs at the idea of anyone fighting alongside just a disciple. Then Ranson wonders if the solution is really this simple, saying all he has to do is use his amazing talent to quiet everyone down. The crowd murmurs to each other about the young man's boldness. Kasagi squeezes his fist tight and wonders if he has the courage to move. Then he turns around and says he's going to see just how long Ranson can get away with being so bold. She then looks at Ranson and warns him that this is serious because their master is causing trouble. He just smiles and asks if she's finished laughing. Aiden looks away and admits that she couldn't hold it in back then. Ranson says that no matter what tricks he tries, all he really needs is to beat everyone. She gives in and says they should start their practice again. That same night, Ranson steps out into the courtyard and spots Aiden sitting on a stone bench, so he calls out to her. Ranson crept up behind her and asked if she had come back out to train again. She told me she was just gazing up at the stars. Ranson suddenly notices he has been speaking casually without even realizing it. Aiden asks him to gaze at the stars, and they sit together to watch. Aiden tells him not to worry since no one is around to judge, calling him her savior before recalling how he saved her and the children when it was too late. He then says that since he saved her life and is older, she should speak formally if she feels grateful. Ranson wonders if she enjoys gazing at the stars, but she corrects him, saying she actually admires the 13 great gods, which leaves him curious. She tells him that while all stars move, there are 13 that stay still and are named after gods, so he asks her why she loves them. Aiden points up to the goddess of wisdom, Mebubar, who appears in the sky only above their home. She admits that seeing that star finally told her where she belonged, which is why she studies the 13 main gods. But Aiden gets up to leave for his lecture while Ranson teases her for trying to escape because she's embarrassed, all while dawn breaks over the Great Hall. Aiden and Ranson walk side by side down the long hallway. Before opening the door, Aiden asks him if he is ready. With a confident smile, Ranson nods yes and steps out into a big courtyard full of waiting warriors. Ranson looks around in shock at how many people have shown up. A group of men ask if he is the Grand Duke's direct disciple, and one says they will find out soon enough, making him realize that everyone is eager to tear him apart. Ranson knew that since so many others wanted that job, they wouldn't treat him with respect. An older man shouts that to celebrate the gathering, friendly duels are about to start. The fighting ring comes alive as the fighters step up to their spots. Ranson stands all by himself right in the middle of the arena. With his opponent watching from across the field, the man admits he doesn't know why the Grand Duke picked him as a disciple, but he promises to change that by winning and taking the spot himself. Ranson stood silent as his opponent unleashed his power. Ranson gives a weak smile at the challenge. He grabs his sword and declares that he is ready to strike at any moment. He sprints fast right at his opponent. The two blades smash together with a force that shakes the air. The man is stunned by how much power Ranson has. Ranson snaps his enemy's sword right in half and gets ready to deliver the finishing blow. Suddenly realizing he's about to die, the opponent dives forward and thrusts his blade straight at his rival's neck. The man hit the ground, defeated. Iodine stands frozen, eyes wide with shock as he watches the scene unfold. Cassius Celsius stands frozen, unable to speak after seeing what he just saw. Ranson spins to face the crowd and just shouts for the next person to step up. Suddenly, a new challenger steps into the arena, points his sword at Ranson, and rushes forward to strike. Ranson gets ready to fight back. In one smooth move, he slips the attack and knocks his opponent to the ground. Ranson leans his sword on his shoulder and shouts out for the next fighter to step up. Other knights stand back and watch the battle unfold. Then he knocks out his next rival with a sharp blow and shouts for the next challenger to step up. He punches the next guy down, yells for the next challenger, and the crowd shouts that he's a monster for beating one of their own uncles. Cassius Celsius sneers at the scene before spinning around and walking away. He started to wonder if his great uncle had truly prepared him for all the challenges ahead, since the tasks felt much easier than he expected. A final opponent steps up, and Ranson asks if this is the last training partner they will ever have. A shadowy figure shouts, "Here I come," and lunges forward to strike. Ranson gathers his strength into his blade just as his foe lunges forward to attack. Suddenly, that shadowy shape springs into the air to smash down from above. But Ranson slips the blow, sending the opponent's sword flying right out of his hand. He then wonders if he might have gone too hard on the young man, and next, the hooded figure turns to leave. Before leaving, the young man bows to show his respect. As Ranson watches him walk out of the combat arena, the scene quickly changes to a grand banquet hall where a fancy table is set. As the celebration buzzed around them, two men chatted and clinked glasses of wine. With their suits on, Yoden and Ranson can't help but say they're so relieved that everything turned out okay. Ranson says the banquet will go perfectly, but then he points out that his senior's outfit is not so perfect. Yoden proudly states that this is the proper look and tells her to learn from him, then asks why she is wearing training shoes. She turns and dashes off, leaving Ranson standing there alone. The feast finally happens, showing that over a month has gone by since he first arrived. He remembered the book of destiny that had brought him to this moment and his hope that something would finally happen. His train of thought breaks when a voice calls out to him, Lord Ranson. The young man Milo Hyaston, whom the hero had just fought, steps forward to introduce himself once more. Ranson knows he is about to fight his last enemy from the arena. Milo Hyaston suddenly bows to show how much he admires Ranson, leaving Ranson completely surprised. He said that Ranson's confident stand drew him in and made fighting him feel like a real honor. Ranson scratches the back of his neck while accepting the young man's wild praise. Milo shows that he has a special way his body works, just like you. Then he takes off his hat to show that he is actually a half-elf. Ranson finally sees that elves are real. Milo tells us that normal folks talk to sword spirits, but he dreams of being like Ranson, who can command both sword spirits and elementals. Ranson feels a little bad for not having a special constitution of his own. The young half-elf looks just like his own kids, so he can't bring himself to say a word. Ranson then encourages him, telling him that if he tries hard enough, he will succeed. After a popular procedure, Milo found it much easier to talk with his sword energy. Ranson wonders if something like doping has become common these days. As the two keep talking in the middle of the hall, Milo suddenly points to the window and says, "It's starting." As the trippy moon climbs into view through the banquet hall window, he marvels at its monthly, stunning beauty, while Ranson doubts it can really be called beautiful. A sharp scream cuts through the banquet hall right as a triangular moon hangs high in the night sky. A guest steps forward and asks what's the matter with his friend. Ranson stares at the scene, completely lost and unable to figure out what's going on. Some folks start changing into scary monsters. He then starts to wonder if this is the prophecy from the Book of Destiny. Milo suddenly bends over in pain, shouting for Lord Ranson as the young half-elf cries out that his body feels strange while he changes. Ranson calls out his name and watches as he changes. Milo starts to worry if he'll be okay as the change happens. Ranson kneels before the beast to ask Milo to wake up, and the creature recognizes him, whispering his name and admitting that all he ever wanted was to be a knight. Ranson looks on in pain as a monster charges, but Milo jumps in to save it, just as Ranson spins around at the last second to feel the attack coming. The beast strikes but gets knocked back, only to lunge at Ranson again while he asks why, just as the monster charges and dodges another hit. Ranson can't help but wonder once again why all this is happening. He keeps missing his shots and wondering why, until a voice snaps him out of his daze just as an iodine serum at his side stops another creature's attack. She shakes him, screaming that they must run to the exit or they'll both die. But Ranson pauses, fearing for Milo. Milo is swarmed and bitten by two other werewolves in the hall, but Iodine grabs his arm just as he realizes it's too late. He looks crushed and gives in, saying he'll go. As they run, Ranson warns that the enemies are too strong and move too fast. Iodine glanced at him and said, "If I can do it, so can you." One of the creatures watches them while they try to get away. One of the shapeshifters lets out a terrifying howl. The others answer in a loud chorus, and suddenly the pair is trapped in a circle of monsters. Ranson stood up straight, ready to fight. With one swift swing of his sword, he chops off the head of one of the monsters. The beast bellows loudly when the blow hits it. Iodine leaps into action and slashes down another foe before it can reach them. Ranson spins around to meet three more werewolves, striking them down with a whirlwind attack while his partner moves in perfect rhythm beside him, cutting a clear path through the chaos. They grab their chance and sprint down the hallway once more. Iodine warns them that the exit is right ahead, and they'll step through it to regroup with the other knights. As they reach the door, she warns that the monsters are hunting the treasury keeper, and they must stop them, only to turn and find the werewolves already blocking their way. Iodine lifts her blade, shouting that this is the final strike and she is ready to strike again. But Ranson grabs her arm and tells her to hold on just a second. He feels something is wrong as something starts creeping out from the back of one of the monsters. Tentacles erupt from the creature's back, and the two watch in shock as the other lycanthropes reveal their own writhing limbs. Then Iodine steps up and uses her sword to stop the storm of attacks. Ranson watches her and thinks about how the ultimate sword skills make your reaction time feel like it has stopped completely. He shouts for them to move forward together, and she says yes. Down on the ground, the cut-off tentacles start to wiggle and grow back. Ranson turns around just as he spots something moving behind him. Suddenly, one of the new tentacles shoots right at him. With a quick move, he stops the attack right in its tracks. He then joins Aiden and warns her that those things keep coming back. The two face the tentacles, and Ranson realizes that just cutting them won't be enough. Aiden shoves Ranson out of the way and takes the hit, but a tentacle still rips right through her stomach. Ranson stands frozen, still trying to make sense of what just went down. Ranson screams and bursts with all his power. He slashes his sword in a quick circle, slicing through every tentacle right around him. The limbs melt away, yet the puddle on the floor starts to flow back together, and the big werewolf lashes out with its own writhing tentacles. Ranson slips aside with a fast move, hits the lycanthrope, and cuts it in half, then takes a deep breath to calm down. Alone in the quiet hallway, he turns and heads for the exit to see the wild battle raging outside. His face smeared with blood, he watches the chaos until a strange light appears in the sky, making him wonder if that is what caused all the trouble. Suddenly, Ranson stumbles backward and hits the floor, crying out that even though he felt stronger, he still couldn't save anyone. A warning tells him he failed to change the past, so he wakes up in a strange new spot, confused by the mysterious female voice calling out to him. She tells him he's rewinding time by breaking the rules of cause and effect, warning that since this power isn't endless, failing will mean total defeat. A book suddenly materializes before him, and the voice offers him good luck, while the words inside shift to reveal that his master has returned a treasure. Ranson is shocked by the message and the six-pointed star medallion before he gets startled in his carriage by Burson, a kind stranger who claims to have found him and taken him on as a disciple. Ranson suddenly understands that he has been sent back to the very start of it all. Ranson turns to his master and says hello. He then asks what war trophy he brought back in the chest. Burson shows that this object is a holy treasure of the cult. When he hears that, Ranson suddenly understands how terrible things are going to happen. He tries to warn his master about the terrible trouble caused by the relic, but Burson cuts him off with a sharp enough, saying he doesn't know what happened and that it's clearly something only Ranson can fix. Ranson leans in to ask him just what he means by that. His master just says he doesn't know, but he's sorry and thanks him anyway. With that, Ranson knows he has to handle everything by himself. Then he decides to ask Burson for something different. He turns to his master and begs to learn how to wield the sword. Burson smiles and nods, saying that starting this way isn't a bad idea at all. They step into their spots for practice, swords ready in their hands. Burson lifts his weapon and vows that from this moment on, he will guide him toward the goal they must reach. A crackle of energy builds up around Burson's sword as he steps forward, daring his opponent to strike with everything he has. Ranson accepts the challenge, raises his sword, and charges forward to attack. Then he throws down a punch so hard it spins the air into a giant whirlwind. The technique rushes at his master, yet Burson stands his ground with a confident smile as he grips his sword with both hands to face the coming blow. With one quick move, his sword slashes through Ranson's attack, leaving Ranson so shocked he drops to his knees and asks, "What was that?" Burson shows us that this is the domain of the perfect blade, glowing with the spirit of steel. He says you have to polish your soul until it fits perfectly with the blade. Ranson gazes at his master, knowing he must reach that realm, while Aiden Serum learns she has to teach for a time. Ranson stared at himself with fierce determination to keep them safe, then swung his sword wide across the castle courtyard. He spins with a perfect move, but his training gets cut short as he suddenly looks up. The bell on the castle tower suddenly starts to ring. Up above, a voice shouts that the psychedelic moon has finally shown itself. Milo Hassan beamed with joy at the person sitting next to him. In the hall, Ranson watches the scene with a tight grip on his jaw as everything finally begins. Because of this strange power, two of the knights turn into roaring werewolves. Ransom watches the scene quietly without saying a word. He remembers spending 2 weeks jumping through time and finding out that the monsters were actually students who had taken a special treatment Milo had mentioned. Even after looking into the drugs, he found nothing odd. Yet Milo's voice still echoed in his mind, shouting that his body felt strange as he changed. Ransom remembers that scary moment with a tight face, then finds himself back in front of Milo, who is fighting hard to stay human while lying on the ground. He drops to his knees and begs his friend to hold on just a bit longer. But just then, another monster lunges at him, and with a quick snap of his blade, he slashes the beast to pieces. After the strike, he wakes up to find himself surrounded by the other werewolves. Even so, he grips his sword tight and stands ready to fight. A werewolf lunges at him, ready to tear him apart with its sharp claws. He decides to try again, steps forward with his sword raised to scare off the monsters, and with a quick sideways swing, he hits one of the werewolves. He cuts a path through the foes, spots Milo getting attacked by a werewolf, yells his name, and sprints toward them to help. Just as he thought he was safe, a creature stepped out from behind him. He spins around and slashes the werewolf to pieces. A sudden scream makes him turn his head to look to the side. Another monster lunges at Milo, who is lying on the ground. As the creature is finally brought under control, it whispers his name. Ransom stops dead in his tracks, trapped by the memory of Milo's dream to become a knight. He couldn't save him again. Then Eden screams his name. Eden steps in front of Ransom to stop a monster from hitting him. She shakes him and yells that they must run or they'll both die, pointing a frantic finger at the door. Eden then points out that they are all incredibly powerful and proposes dividing the work up. She suggests slicing the necks off while she deals with the claws. Ransom suddenly shouts and cuts her off, demanding she keep quiet. Ransom drops to his knees as she screams his name again. Then he sprints down the hallway by himself right at the lycanthropes. He leaps into the air and charges the creatures to fight them. Ransom falls to his knees, shielding himself as he takes a beating from several attackers. The view changes to a sky filled with stars. Standing on the rooftop, Ransom asks Iodine if Lord 13 is watching, which leaves her completely confused. She turns to him and asks how he knew. He says he knows their way because she told him, and spotting Lord 13 shows him exactly where they stand. Ransom wonders if she's protecting that place while gazing up at the sky. Iodine confirms that this is where she found everything she has, yet he asks why he protected her as he remembers the words about staying alive and guarding her. She talks about a special place where the sword moves all by itself, and Ransom wonders if it fights against its owner, while Iodine smiles and asks if he fears she can't control her blade, only for her to explain that once you reach that level, the difference between controlling it or being controlled no longer matters. Ransom realizes the sword is just an extension of his own heart, beating and moving exactly as he feels it. Back in the fight, he spins a circular strike to hit his enemies. From the defeated enemies, a fresh wave of tentacles rises to strike Ransom, who charges forward with his sword, cutting through the blows to ready himself for the final strike. He slashes the beast in two with just one swift move. Iodine dashes toward him, shouting that he's crazy and trying to kill himself, just as he realizes Iodine had saved his life. He then tells her that if she has the breath to speak, she should use it to swing her sword. Suddenly, one of the werewolves lunges forward to strike. Ransom slashes the weapon away with a sharp swing of his sword. He finally understands that he not only saved Iodine but also took down the monster. Looking down at the fallen foes, he wonders if he has truly won. But Iodine shouts that the werewolves are breaking out the door. She grabs him and says they have to go too. Ransom looks up and sees a light in the sky that he knows well. He stares in shock, wondering if this nightmare is repeating itself, only for a message to flash on his screen, declaring that their attempt to change the past has failed. Time rewinds again, erasing the broken timeline, and he finds himself back in the carriage under the daylight, staring ahead with determination as he reflects on his journey. Knowing he must guard the cult's treasure but realizes he can't do it alone, he turns to his master and asks how he can get the sword he needs. Ransom shouts for his master and then asks exactly how he can get to the sword support. He says the young man is almost there, just half a step away. Ransom says he feels the exact same way. In a flash of battle memory, he lunges forward with his sword, ready to strike a werewolf. He pushes his body to move faster, but an enemy jumps out and hits him from behind, forcing him to strike with all his speed. Back in the present, Ransom tries to summon the sword but it won't budge, so Burson explains that shouting won't work, prompting the young man to ask how one can command their heart to beat or their stomach to digest. Ransom says that he does not. The master taught that a sword is not forced to obey but chosen to stand together with you, becoming one with your heart rather than just a tool you control. This support isn't a separate step, but just the act of becoming one with the weapon. Two men hoist him up as Burson orders him to leave his sword sheathed while Ransom wonders his next move, and his master urges him to wait for the blade to draw itself. Ransom tries to argue, but he knows there isn't a moment to spare. Out by the big castle, Iodine Serum spots him and strikes. Ransom walks up to her without saying a word, and she notes that he hasn't changed at all. Then he smiles and says that just seeing her somehow calms him down. While the master and the others watch, he notes that the two fought faster than he thought, and Ransom lifts his sword high. Two guards open their mouths to scold him for daring to speak before the Grand Duke, but a hand shoots up to shut them up. Burson says the young man has finally touched the point where the blade and his own soul become one. Then his master asks what Ransom truly wants in his heart. He says he wants to keep Iodine safe in the city. His eyes turn cold and firm, showing that he truly believes in what he's doing. Iodine watches him in silence, and later, dressed in formal wear, Ranson, Iodine, and Milo Hisun gather inside the grand banquet hall. She thanked Ranson, saying that thanks to him, she could finally wear proper shoes to the graduation banquet. She admits that she almost turned around halfway through to swap them. He answers that it would have seemed very odd to him. Milo insists that for their safety, they'd be better off staying close. Iodine asks what Ranson means, but Ranson just says that sometimes things are like that. The half-elf teases Iodine about her rare messy moment, and she promises it really happened only once. Ranson stands quiet with a fixed stare, knowing the prophecy warns that if the Book of Destiny is erased and the Master goes back in time, there will be only one last chance left. Just then, a bell rang out and a crack tore open the sky. Ranson spins around and insists that they have to win this time. Suddenly, werewolves burst into the hall and start attacking everyone inside. Iodine asks what's going on as Milo drops to his knees. Ranson grabs her by the shoulders and asks her to listen very closely. He tells her to take the knights and get the healthy recruits out, but she insists they must first slay the monsters before anyone can leave. He says he'll deal with the monsters while she gets the troops ready after the retreat. Ranson then tells her to head south to the city to hunt down that strange light, strike it down, and wipe out whatever is making it glow. Iodine asks if he knows something, gets a yes, then tells her to go and stop anyone who tries to hold her back before the werewolves finish gathering in the hall, and he agrees to his orders. Then she dashes out of the hall to complete her mission. Ranson stands right in the middle of the madness, gripping one of the werewolves tight. Beside him, Milo starts turning into a werewolf and complains that his body feels all wrong. Ranson urges him to hang on for just a bit more. He spins to block the horde of 300 werewolves and shield Milo, diving in front of a beast's deadly claws just as it strikes. He realizes that how many enemies are coming doesn't matter as long as his sword moves when he wants it to. Then he lets loose a flurry of lightning-fast blows. Attacks struck several werewolves all at once. Ranson pushes forward, slashing down another foe, and vows that this time not a single enemy will get away. He leaps into a wide, sweeping curve, his blade slicing cleanly through the air. A wolfman lunges at him, but his body moves on its own before he even knows he's reacting. He knows the sword isn't in his hands. Instead, it's pulling him forward to cut down another monster. The blade is shouting so much information at him that he can't take it all in. With every creature he defeats, he sees flashes of future moves and realizes he has touched the realm of true sword perception, just as the remaining lycanthropes surge toward him from every angle. He readies himself for the clash and then pours out a storm of blows that shakes the whole hall. The creatures tumble to the ground all around him. Finally, he managed to put down every werewolf before they could get away. Seeing the mess, he says it's all over. Milo curls up on the ground, completely changed. Ranson dropped to his knees beside him, begging him to hang on because he was sure there had to be a way to fix this. But Milo shakes his head, saying it's not that easy. Ranson shakes his head and tells him not to say such foolish words, insisting that the powerful mages there will certainly find a way. Milo apologizes and admits he knows the truth. He says his condition can't be fixed and all he wants is to pass away still being a human. Milo chooses to end his life before Ranson does. Several tentacles burst from the monster and lunge straight for Ranson. He clenches his teeth while fighting back and thrusting his sword into the beast, getting hit by its writhing tentacles, until the monster bursts into flames and Ranson declares that he has taken enough punishment. As he watches the body burn, he vows that if Milo is reborn 10,000 years from now, he will treat him like family. He quickly sheathes his sword and runs out of the hall, stepping past the bodies of the lycanthropes. He scans the city and sees it is dark, so he knows Aiden has won. Aiden sprints toward him, screaming that Ranson was hit and that the master shattered the heretic's chains. She remembers that the strange light vanished right after they defeated the master. With that, the werewolf's power vanished and one of them fell before her. Ranson smiles, a warm light glowing inside his chest, and tells her she did well. Aiden freezes in her tracks, shouting his name as he melts away into tiny floating pieces. Under the bright full moon, a younger Ranson walks alone through the broken city. He grips his heart and wishes he'd told her how well she did. Ranson spins around, wondering if he's finally found the heart of Kushin since he vanished a week ago, then shakes his head at the chaotic mess the city has become, just like he expected. With his siblings away from the Ileana estate, he jumps from rooftop to rooftop. He lands and realizes this must be the only place they could possibly be. Then the young man heads toward Pietro Baroni's castle. Since Ribera knew Sia, he figured she must have taken his siblings there to find a safe hiding spot. He trusts Ribera to keep them safe, yet he wants to see it with his own eyes, only to find a woman suddenly at his back with a blade to his throat, demanding to know who sent him while he realizes that even the tiniest move will get him cut, proving she is a master killer.